Hello everyone, welcome back to Revenge with Nora. Today's story is about the woman who lost her husband. While she was at his funeral, his mother sold her house, but he had no idea what was coming next. So without wasting time, let's bring in the story with the Nora's wife.
She should have stayed quiet. Look where that got her. That's what I heard as I stepped out of the car, black veil still clinging to my face, funeral dust on my shoes. Two women across the street were sipping soda like it was a movie. One of them actually chuckled. She always thought she was better than her brother. No. She's got nothing. Hi everyone. My name is Celeste. And if you think you know how this ends, stay tuned. Because this story doesn't start with grief. It starts with betrayal so cruel, it hollowed me out from the inside. I had just buried my husband. The only man who stood beside me when my own blood treated me like a burden. We'd been married 19 years. He built the porch I used to sip tea on. He painted the walls of our little house every spring, even after chemo took his strength. No. I stood in front of it, or what used to be it. The windows were boarded. The curtains were gone. The house was empty, silent, and nailed right to the front door with a bent rusted nail was a piece of paper. Not even in an envelope. Just torn from a spiral notebook. Read. Sold it. You're welcome. Enjoy the freedom. J. No signature. No kindness. Just that one mocking initial. Jeremy. My younger brother. The one who begged to hold things down while I handled the funeral and the burial and the heartbreak. The one who once cried to me, "You're all I've got left." He didn't just sell my house. He gutted it. Tore out the cabinets, the pipes, the floors. Took the photos off the walls. Took the ring box I kept under the sink. Took everything. And left me nothing but whispers. People I'd grown up with, looking at me like a fool. They whispered one word as I walked past them, black dress dragging in the dirt. Deserved. But they didn't know what I had. They didn't know what he forgot. And by the time the police showed up, he was the one whispering. Next door. To a lawyer. With handcuffs on his wrists. They didn't even knock. 3 police cars. No sirens. Just slow, deliberate tires over gravel. Like justice had time on its hands. Jeremy's porch light was still on. Bright, smug. Just like him. I stood quietly on the curb as officers approached his door. Neighbors peeked through blinds. One man even pulled out a lawn chair. And when Jeremy opened the door, still in gym shorts and socks, he laughed. "Can I help you?" he said like it was some mix-up. That's when one officer pulled a small black folder from his jacket, opened it, and said words that made his smile drop faster than his jaw. "We're here about the property theft. And what was buried beneath it." My hands stayed folded in front of me. Not shaking. Not breaking. Because this wasn't impulsive. This was earned. Let me take you back 3 weeks. To a night no one else remembers but me. The night my husband, Ron, whispered through his oxygen mask. "The deed's in the garden box. Under the lavender. Not your brother. Never him." I thought it was nonsense, the meds, the fever. But something about the way he gripped my hand, his eyes wide like they'd seen the future, made me write it down. After his funeral, I returned home to grieve in silence. But that silence was gone. So was the lavender. So was the garden. So was the house. Jeremy had done more than sell it. He bulldozed it. But not before I did exactly what Ron said. I dug beneath the box and found a tin-wrapped envelope. Inside, the original deed. Photocopies of my marriage certificate. A letter from Ron, notarized, dated 11 months before his death. "This property belongs solely to Celeste Eleanor Moore. No one else. If anyone tampers with it, they're tampering with me." I walked straight to the station. Said only this. "I believe my brother committed fraud and illegal property transfer. Also, he disturbed what was buried on sacred ground." The sergeant leaned forward. "Sacred ground." I smiled. My husband was buried with something Jeremy thought he stole years ago. Jeremy thought he buried the past. But Ron? He buried proof. No. My brother wasn't laughing anymore. Just staring at the cuffs. Whispering to his lawyer. How the hell did she know? He still didn't know what I'd kept secret, even from Ron. And when I revealed it, he'd lose everything again. They say grief makes you soft. But sometimes, it sharpens you. As Jeremy was escorted down the steps, he looked straight at me. No apology. No fear. Just confusion, the kind only cowards wear when the mask falls. It was just a house, he muttered. Why are you doing this? That's what he said. Right before his foot slipped on the bottom step and the officer yanked him back upright. But this wasn't just a house. This was my life. And he didn't just sell it. He erased it, piece by piece. You see, Jeremy always hated that Ron and I got the house. Even though it was legally left to me by our grandmother, he called it stealing from the family. He lived on favors. Manipulated our mother into rewriting wills, twisting words, guilt-tripping everyone into thinking he was the poor, unlucky younger sibling. But I saw through it. The gambling debts. The car accidents. The mysterious cash disappearances from our father's safe. And Ron? He never trusted Jeremy. That's why he hid more than the deed. Back when the house was still ours, Ron built a false wall in the basement. I never asked why, just figured it was for old tools or supplies. But weeks before he passed, I remember finding him down there. Weak. But determined. He looked up at me and said, "One day if I'm not here and he touches what's not his, break the drywall. You'll know why." That night, after the house was gone and Jeremy was arrested, I returned to the empty lot. Alone. Dust in the air. A stray nail glinting in the moonlight. The porch, gone. But beneath the rubble, the concrete slab where the basement had been, still stood. And the wall, still there. Cracked. Like it was begging me to open it. With gloves and a crowbar, I did what Ron asked. Inside, wrapped in cloth, inside a locked fire-safe box, was something that would change everything. Jeremy thought he stole my house. What he didn't know. He also stole evidence. Because buried inside that wall were the ledgers, the bank slips, the forged documents, even audio recordings of Jeremy begging Ron for just one more favor, swearing no one will find out. He thought those files were long gone. But they weren't. Ron never trusted words. He trusted proof. And now so did the police. Next day I handed them the box. The sergeant raised an eyebrow. This isn't just about the house, is it? I shook my head. This is about everything he buried and thought would stay dead. The arraignment was set for Thursday. Jeremy walked into court wearing a suit he borrowed, not from shame but from strategy. Still smug. Still convinced this was all a misunderstanding I'd eventually forgive. But he wasn't prepared for what the prosecutor laid on the table. 3 charges. Fraudulent property transfer. Destruction of protected property. And worst of all, grand larceny from a federal beneficiary account. His smirk faded fast. You see, what Jeremy never knew was that Ron had a secret. And I did too. Ron had been saving. Not for us. Not even for retirement. But for my mother, who in her last days had made Ron her financial executor, knowing Jeremy would blow it all in months. She had late-stage dementia. Didn't trust Jeremy with a grocery list, let alone her estate. So quietly, legally, she left it all to Ron, with instructions to give half to me, and the other to a local women's shelter she had once fled to when Jeremy lost control during an argument. Ron followed it to the letter. He created a trust in my name. Jeremy thought I was broke. Thought the house was the last thing I had. But I had something stronger. Time. And silence. Because I never flaunted the money. Never rubbed it in. I just lived, quietly, peacefully beside the man I loved. Until Jeremy saw Ron's death as an opportunity. He called the real estate agent the same day as the funeral. Forged my signature using an old birthday card. Signed documents using my maiden name, not realizing my legal name had changed 5 years earlier. He didn't just steal my home. He tried to erase me. But paper trails don't lie. And digital fingerprints? They don't forget. At the trial they played one of Ron's recordings. Jeremy's voice filled the courtroom speakers. "Look man, I know I messed up. But once she's gone no one will care. I just need access to the house, that's all. She'll forgive me eventually." Pause. Then Ron's voice, quiet and low. "If you touch one floorboard without her permission, I'll make sure you go down with everything you ever tried to bury." Jeremy didn't know he was being recorded. But Ron always prepared for the storm. He just never lived to see it. Now it was my turn. And I wasn't just going to finish what he started. I was going to make sure Jeremy finally faced what he ran from all his life. Consequences. The judge ordered a temporary freeze on all of Jeremy's accounts. That's when the panic set in. Gone was the smug tilt of his head. Now he sat hunched beside his lawyer, tugging at his sleeves like a child caught lying. But this wasn't just about prison. It was about something else. Something he didn't know I had the power to do. Because while Jeremy was busy stealing from the dead, I had spent the last 2 weeks filing paperwork for the civil side of things. You see, I wasn't just going to let him serve a sentence and walk free someday. I was going to make sure he walked into nothing. No savings. No name. No protection. Because the trust Ron created, it included a backup clause. If anyone directly responsible for financial harm came within 1 mile of the property, the entire account would legally shift into my sole ownership. Ron thought of everything. The property may have been bulldozed, but the coordinates, the boundary, and the clause still stood. No. The shelter Jeremy tried to block from receiving funds was back on the table. My lawyer handed me a pen and said, "If you sign this, Celeste, we file for liquidation. He'll lose the house he bought. Her. Even the gym business he started last year." I paused. Because even after everything, there was a tiny voice inside me that whispered, "But he's your brother." And then I remembered. The voicemail. A message Jeremy left a day after Ron died, but before I knew the house was gone. I had never played it until now. It was short. "Hey, I know you're probably drowning in funeral stuff, but I left a surprise for you back home. Thought I'd take one thing off your plate. Hope you like what I did." He knew what he was doing. And he didn't just steal. He celebrated it. So I signed. With no trembling. No tears. Just ink on paper. That night Jeremy was served. Again. Not in a courtroom this time, but in his driveway. He came home to find a notice posted on his door. Property seized. Pending auction. All contents subject to legal review. And as he ripped the paper down, his phone buzzed again. This time from his old girlfriend, the one he'd left 5 years ago. Her message? Wow. Karma's fast. Heard everything. I kept the receipts too. Turns out, I wasn't the only one he buried. He'd learned just how deep the damage really went. I never wanted to become the kind of woman who kept records. Grief taught me otherwise. Ron used to say, the truth doesn't always scream. Sometimes it waits, patient, buried, quiet, until someone digs. And dig I did. Because Jeremy wasn't done, not by a long shot. After the seizure notice hit his front door, he did what manipulators always do. He turned to the court of public opinion. Started spinning stories. Crying to friends. Posting online. Calling me unstable from loss. Overreacting. A woman consumed by revenge. He told people I was just a bitter widow looking for someone to blame. But the internet doesn't erase screenshots. And neither do I. As I had a folder. Labeled simply, then, inside. Emails he sent to Ron begging for access to my mother's pension. Voicemails of him mocking my grief. And messages, to a woman named Marissa, offering her a new life if she'd move into my house once I was out of the picture. Turns out Jeremy wasn't just selling my home. He was planning a life in it. Without me. Without Ron. Without any consequence. Marissa was a barista I'd seen maybe twice. Polite, young, soft-spoken. She came forward willingly. Said she didn't know the truth. Not until she walked into that house and saw Ron's photo still hanging in the hallway, dust covering the frame. I thought he'd inherited the place, she whispered to my lawyer. He said his sister left after her husband passed. That she didn't want the house anymore. She returned the keys. Testified in court. And gave us something else. Something I never knew existed. A voice memo Jeremy sent her while drunk. It's just a signature. She's grieving, she won't notice. Besides, my name should have been on the deed years ago. That memo? Played in court. Right after the judge asked if there was any indication this was premeditated. And suddenly, the energy shifted. This wasn't just theft. Or greed. Or betrayal. This was a long game. One that failed. Back at home I walked past the old lot again. Someone had laid a single flower where the porch once stood. No card. Just a note tucked into the stem. He forgot who he was messing with. You didn't. For the first time in weeks. I smiled. Because the storm was clearing. But Jeremy's reckoning? Just beginning. The courtroom was packed for sentencing. Reporters. Locals. Even a few familiar faces from the neighborhood, the same ones who once whispered she got what she deserved. No. They just stared at me in silence. Jeremy sat at the defense table, jaw tight, fingers twitching. His lawyer kept glancing sideways, like even he wanted to walk away. The judge leaned forward. Mr. Brooks, after reviewing the evidence, including financial manipulation, property fraud, and willful emotional harm, this court finds your actions deliberate, deceitful, and damaging. Jeremy opened his mouth. But for the first time, he said nothing. No jokes. No eye rolls. Not even a protest. Just silence. Then came the ruling. 2 years of probation. 6 months of house arrest. Full restitution. And a permanent record of felony fraud. But that wasn't the part that gutted him. The judge turned to me. Ms. Moore, as the victim, you're entitled to make a statement. I stood, but didn't walk to the podium. I stayed where I was. Spoke calmly. No tears. Just truth. You didn't just steal my house. You stole my grief. You took the one place I was supposed to cry in peace and turned it into your playground. I forgive you, but I won't forget. And I won't protect you anymore. Jeremy looked away. The judge nodded slowly and the bailiff let him out. No cuffs this time. Just shame. The kind that doesn't go away with parole. Later that night I returned to the empty lot again. One last time. I stood in the dirt where our bedroom used to be, closed my eyes, and whispered, "It's done, Ron. I protected what you left me. But I wasn't done building. The following month, with the remaining trust money, I bought the land back. Not to rebuild the house, but to create something bigger than both of us. A small grief center. For widows, for women, for people like me who had things taken, and needed a place to begin again. We broke ground on a Thursday. Neighbors came. Volunteers offered help. Even the shelter my mother once fled to sent flowers. Jeremy never showed. But I heard he moved 2 towns over. Took a job cleaning gutters. And every now and then people still mention his name, as a warning, not a legacy. Me. I kept one thing from the original house. Ron's old porch swing. Hung it from the center oak tree. Painted it blue. And every morning I sit with a cup of tea. And peace. They asked if I'd speak at the dedication. I didn't want to. But as I stood beneath that tree, the blue swing behind me swaying in the wind, I realized. This wasn't just a building. It was the ending Ron deserved. And the beginning I never thought I'd earn. The plaque was small. Nothing fancy. Just a bronze plate at the foot of the tree that read, "For the ones who were buried in silence and rose anyway." I looked out over the crowd. Some neighbors, some strangers, some women with faces hollowed by grief just like mine once was. And I told them the truth. About how betrayal doesn't always come with knives. Sometimes it comes with a key. Sometimes your own blood will rob you of everything just to feed their emptiness. But you don't have to stay empty. You can rebuild even from ash. After the ceremony, a woman approached me. Mid-40s. Soft eyes. Wore her pain in how she stood, carefully like the world might tip. She whispered, "I was there the day he nailed that note to your door." I didn't say anything. "I'm sorry." I didn't scold her. I just said, "Then help someone else not stay silent." And she did. She volunteers every Saturday now, helps with the garden. Jeremy's name? No longer a scar. Just a warning. Of what happens when someone tries to bury the wrong woman. And the ledgers Ron hid. They're in a vault. Labeled. Preserved. For anyone who needs proof that even in death he still stood up for me. Sometimes justice isn't loud. Sometimes it arrives in silence. A letter. A recording. A truth no thief can erase. And when the winds blow through that tree, I swear I hear Ron's voice. "You did good, Celeste." I sip my tea. I let the sun hit my face. And I smile. Because grief didn't destroy me. It revealed who never deserved to stay.